The word servitude, it's one of those words that it makes you kind of flinch, right? Especially when you hear it in a religious context. It conjures up these images of control, of losing your freedom. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? Let's explore a pretty radical idea. What if true servitude is actually the ultimate form of liberation?
Okay, let's just dive right into the heart of it. When you look at religious metaphors, you see this pretty big difference right away. The Quran often talks about a master and a servant. Meanwhile, the Bible frequently uses the language of a father and son. Now, on the surface, it's not hard to see why one might feel, well, harsh and demanding, while the other feels more tender and loving. But is that really the whole story? Is that first impression the end of the conversation? Or is there maybe a crucial layer of meaning that we've totally missed? So let's try looking at this from a totally different angle. What happens if we redefine the two key players in this whole relationship? Because that, right there, is where everything starts to change.
First up, let's reconsider the master. In the Quran, one of the most important names for God is al-Haq, and that means the absolute truth, or the reality. So we're not talking about a master in the sense of some random powerful king who makes up rules on a whim. No. We're talking about a being whose very essence is truth, whose very nature is justice. And getting your head around that one point, well, it changes everything.
So, okay, if the master is absolute truth, then what does that make the servant? Well, in this light, servitude isn't about being a slave or just blindly following orders. It's about making a voluntary, conscious choice. It's a complete submission to that which is real, to that which is true.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Submission to truth sounds pretty abstract, pretty philosophical, right? But here's the thing. It's not some strange religious concept. It actually taps into something deep inside all of us, something fundamental about how our minds work.
Just think about it for a second. When you're faced with a proven fact, you see the evidence, the logic is sound, what does your mind do? It naturally yields to it. You accept it. You align your thinking with it. This call to servitude is really just that same process, but on a grander scale. It's an invitation to align our whole selves with ultimate reality.
And the Quran points to Abraham as the perfect example of this. He's described as Musliman, which literally means one who had submitted to truth. His whole story is about his willingness to sacrifice absolutely everything, to pay any price for the principles he was convinced were true.
Okay, so what does all this mean for us? Day to day, well, this way of thinking completely transforms religion from a static set of beliefs into a dynamic, active, lifelong mission. It really boils down to two simple but incredibly powerful steps. First, you have to actively pursue truth. Keep an open mind, keep learning, keep seeking. And second, when you find something you're genuinely convinced is true, you have to have the courage to submit to it, to let it actually shape your beliefs and your actions. And this next point is absolutely crucial. The mission is not about arriving at some final destination called the truth, where you know everything with 100% certainty. I mean, we're human, right? We can get things wrong. The real duty, the real virtue is in the honest, lifelong pursuit of it.
And just think about the kind of person this mindset creates. If your goal is the pursuit of truth, not the possession of it, it changes you. It creates real humility because you're always aware, hey, I might be wrong about this. It fosters openness because you have to consider that other people might be right. And that naturally leads to genuine tolerance because you see everyone as a fellow traveler on the same journey of discovery.
And on the flip side, the greatest danger is thinking you've already arrived. The second you believe you have the final, complete truth, the search is over. Your mind closes. And that is the absolute recipe for dogmatism, which can so easily lead to conflict and intolerance.
So, with this deep philosophical framework, you'd probably expect the day-to-day practice to be incredibly difficult, right? A heavy burden. But this is where we find a really surprising twist.
So check this out. There's this shocking and frankly rarely discussed saying from the Prophet Muhammad. Every difficult thing is forbidden. Wow, just let that sink in. It suggests that this path, this alignment with truth, was never meant to be a crushing, unbearable weight.
And it doesn't stop there. Another tradition quotes him as saying, "Have fun and play. I dislike to see harshness in your religion." This completely challenges the idea that a life devoted to truth has to be grim and humorless. It says there has to be room for joy, for play, for ease.
So when you put all of this together, the entire picture just shifts. The goal is no longer about following a long list of harsh external rules because you're afraid. Instead, it becomes this liberating alignment with our most authentic human drive, the drive to seek and live by the truth. And because that drive is so natural to us, the path itself shouldn't feel like some unnatural, terrible hardship. It should feel like coming home.
And that brings us to one last question to think about. What if this servitude, this complete willing submission, not to a tyrant, but to truth itself, what if it isn't a cage at all? What if it's actually the only path to real, ultimate freedom?